Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Birdwell, this is sort of groundbreaking. This is pretty new and innovative, and so even though there's a late hour, there are some technical questions. The purpose of the creation of this improper entry offense in this bill is it to enact a state law that would be parallel to federal immigration law?
Say again?
Is the purpose of this bill, the crime that it creates, the improper entry offense, is it to enact a state law that would be parallel to the federal immigration law so that we can prevent illegal border crossings? Is that the purpose of the law?
No, we want to prevent illegal entry, to drive the border crossings to the international checkpoints in Texas, or compel the cartels to move their human commodity to other states. And that's what's actually happening in Arizona right now.
So under HB7's authorization of this new border force officers to carry out the activities in section 411.0283, is the intent of your bill that the Texas Border Force officers will not operate under the direction or the control of federal immigration officers?
That's correct.
Okay. Under HB7's authorization of the Border Force officers to carry out activities in section 411.0283, the Border Force officers will determine whether an individual is crossing the border unlawfully, correct?
That's correct. That's why I told Senator Blanco that those officers will have to be in close proximity to the border region and the observation of the river to be able to determine that.
So under your bill, HB7's authorization of this Border Force officers to carry out the activities, they get to decide which people to arrest for illegal border crossings, correct?
They would certainly have that discretion.
And they will also be able to arrest individuals and hold them in state custody, right? I think I've heard that. They would be able to hold them in state custody.
Right. State custody because they've committed a state crime.
Okay. Would that custody apply? And I heard you say that if families were crossing, you would refer them to the Border Patrol. Is that correct?
That is correct. Current policy for DPS is that when any group of individuals presents themselves as a family unit, could be man, woman, 2 kids. Okay. Doesn't necessarily mean that those kids are in fact those adults' kids. They could be being trafficked. But DPS, in their testimony Thursday, Director McCraw's testimony to the committee Thursday said that the Border Patrol has a better capacity to make that determination, and that we don't separate families, so that when people present themselves as family units, the immediate process is to put that into the federal lane for immigration processing, even though it would be a state crime to improperly enter the state. Right. Because it's a family unit, turn them over for federal processing on immigration as opposed to the state crime of improper entry.
Seems reasonable. Under this bill's authorization of these Border Force officers to carry out the activities in Section 411.0283 and Section 2.01, well, the border officers, they will get to decide who's entered or attempted to enter the state from a foreign nation at a location other than a lawful point of entry, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right.
So they'll also get to decide who has eluded examination or inspection by U.S. immigration officers, correct?
That is possible. That's certainly possible if we're operating outside the immediate boundary of the federal jurisdictional band at a port of entry, right, and there's an attempt to evade federal authorities. The state can assist federal authorities in that regard.
So, my last 2 questions.
Sure.
Under this bill's authorization, HB7, the Border Force officers, they're allowed to carry out the activities under Section 411.0283, Section .201. They get to decide who's attempted to enter, obtained entry to this state from a foreign nation, also by intentionally false or misleading representation or the intentional concealment of a material fact, correct?
That's correct.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
My understanding that on March 16th, in testimony before your Board of Security Committee, Attorney General Paxton stated that with respect to people crossing the border with Mexico, that the, quote, major problem here is asylum. Is the purpose of HB7 for Texas to have a mechanism to stop people from crossing the border for the purpose of claiming asylum?
No, it's to drive them to the ports of entry to make the claim of asylum.
But the purpose is to...
Texas has no authority in the asylum claim. Only an immigration officer or a border patrol officer can make that initial threat determination as to whether or not it's a legitimate claim of asylum. There are two types. I won't bore you with it because it's 1 o'clock in the morning. But the purpose is to deter and repel those that would come across the Texas border at non-ports of entry. If individuals go to a port of entry and say, I'm here to claim asylum, that immigration officer under the current administration could say, we've made the threat determination. The credible fear is what it's called, credible fear determination. Here's your I-589. You keep walking across the bridge and you can walk to Houston or San Antonio or Kansas City, Missouri. And the state has no authority in that regard whatsoever.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.